welcome back to ESBR Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Elliot Grigg for another weekly preview. We are both still recovering from a stunning performance by Josh Kelly over Friday night over Troy Williamson. Elliot, how are you? What did you think of the weekend's boxing? What was your highlight? What was your low light?
I think, to be honest, I do feel like I've been in with Wilder off the back of that Williamson Kelly fight. I think I start off actually by it's a good place to start actually. So I need to come out here and I suppose give credit to the other Kelly, fighting pride of Northern Ireland himself, Paul Kelly, who's not here this week. I think he's still celebrating in Krakow. Who did predict last week that Josh Kelly was going to win? And, I, on camera, kept it quite professional, but I was guffawing and laughing at him off camera. But as has been said, he has come to the fore, Paul Kelly, and he deserves all the credit for it, and he was correct. So it's a good job, like I said, it's a good job he's on the betting show, and it's a good job he does the review show as well, because the man knows a lot, and I know about as much as Roger Mayweather, who don't know shit about boxing. So, first of all, congratulations, Paul, and I'm not too bad. I'd say the low light for me was obviously that Williamson Kelly. Which in some ways, it was a bit lower than Fury Chisora for me, really. I was so down after that. But I think the highlight for the weekend was obviously the Chocolatito Strada fight. Unbelievable. Obviously, I'm my head and heart always sort of belongs with Chocolatito. But again, what a fight. I would watch a fourth, frankly. It was nice to see that fight sort of rescue boxing from the sort of torturedness of everything else. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to going through this week with you.
Yeah, a weekend of boxing up and downs, but yeah, fair play to you for holding your hands up. We all get some clangers wrong every so often. Lots to cover. We'll go straight into it. I will start with the main event in the UK this week: Josh Warrington against Luis Alberto Lopez at the Leeds Arena. I think if Josh Warrington can win this fight, you got to think there's going to be a mega fight around the corner, whether that's going to be against Lee Woods, perhaps a third fight with Mauricio Lara, perhaps another unification fight, possibly kind of at a stadium in the UK in Las Vegas. Big fights. However, Luis Alberto Lopez, I saw him stop Isaac Lowe in York Hall about a year ago, and he is a competitor. He's a very good fighter. And if Josh Warrington's not at his best, or if Josh Warrington's past his peak, this could be a slippery slope. I think it's a tougher test than Kiko Martinez. So we'll see. But I just think I would say to anyone, don't hold your breath on this one. I think this is a tough fight just after England France in the World Cup. So worth staying up for, in my opinion. But interested to know your thoughts as well, Elliot.
I actually agree with you. I think I am a big fan of Josh Warrington. I have been a big fan of Josh Warrington, but equally, I do think that Josh Warrington is fallible, and I do think Josh Warrington can be got out. And it almost feels like every fight he goes in, especially against a Mexican, you kind of feel like who is renowned in this case as well. Not necessarily as big a puncher, obviously, as Lara, but you're sitting there going, Mexicans, the style they have tend to be sort of quite forward. I do get concerned about Josh Warrington, frankly. Obviously that sort of Selby Frampton run. The Galahad fight was close, obviously, but I actually scored it for Warrington just because the tactics of Galahad I don't think were necessarily what you should employ to sort of rip a belt from a champion, as it were. But obviously the Lara fights, and then obviously we know obviously how old Martinez is. So I'm kind of reticent to give too much on that, even though it's a dangerous opponent. But yeah, I do think I'm actually in agreement with you. I think this Lopez fight is a tricky fight for Josh Warrington, and I do just think at some point he's going to come unstuck, and I hope it isn't this weekend, but it could potentially be.
Yeah, it's a real tricky one. I've done a bit of research into Lopez. His last 5 fights, all wins, 4 of them by stoppage. So I think that gives an indication of where his kind of punching power is at. 26-2, 29 years old. So less fights than Warrington, younger than Warrington. It's really, it's an interesting one. I'm really looking forward to it. There's not, in terms of like fights that have happened in the UK this year, I think this could be one of the best. I'm not sure that's saying a lot, but I really do think that. Really looking forward to it on DAZN. Josh Warrington versus Luis Alberto Lopez this Saturday night, and I will hand the next fight over to you, Elliot.
So I'm actually over in Belfast, not with Paul Kelly, but with Conlan this weekend. We're going to talk obviously about his fight against Karim Guerfi, who is a 35-year-old fighter from France, who many people will possibly remember being stopped by Lee McGregor in the first round. He also lost to Jordan Gill. So, yeah, I mean, this is a fight really for Conlan, who obviously recently has fought Mariaga, got the UD victory there, the Lee Wood fight, which I think everyone remembers fight of the year for me still. Down in that division, like you're talking obviously about with, Warrington as well, where Conlan essentially outboxed Lee Wood for large portions of that fight before getting stopped at the last. But really, so yeah, this is really a fight for, just going through the figures, 17-1 for Conlan, 8 KOs, obviously not a massive puncher, but equally Guerfi's only got 9 KO victories from his 31-6 record. So for me, really, I mean, this is kind of a sort of kind of tune over, tick over fight, I would think, for Conlan, to be perfectly honest. I think Conlan will win this and win this fairly handsomely. Whether it's a KO or not, I think with Conlan, you can't really tell. It doesn't need to be obviously as heavy-handed as others in the division, Lee Wood included. But a top 10 fighter in that division. So I really want to get your thoughts really on slightly whether you obviously, well, I would assume, we haven't talked about it off air, that you potentially agree with me that this could be a win for Conlan. But where do you see Conlan going post this fight is the sort of question that I'd like to know. Do you see a potential rematch with Lee Wood? Do you see him even fighting someone the likes of Warrington, how that fight would play out? Where do you see him going sort of next year?
Yeah, tricky one. I'm glad we're not touching on the fight too much, because I can't see Michael Conlan losing to Guerfi. I think it's good for him to have one before the year's out, but I just think that he's not going to the chance of him losing against Kurum Guerfi are quite limited, I think, on Saturday night. I don't see the Lee Wood rematch happening, because I think if you're Lee Wood, Michael Conlan nearly beat you last time, and you've got other options. So I don't see that happening. Maybe if Michael Conlan could win a world title from somewhere else, and then maybe there could be a unification fight. I also hope Conlan isn't focusing too much on that rematch and accept that there's other options for him as well. So yeah, in terms of where he goes next, hopefully one of the other world champions. I think that's Michael Conlan. He's not a young fighter. He's been a pro for a little while now. We know he's world level. So I think that's what his target should be. But sometimes world title fights aren't that easy to make.
Do you see? We'll finish it off here. But do you see this fight? I mean, not the preview. Do you see Conlan winning a world title? Is that something that you see for him in maybe the next year or the year after? Do you see that as a possibility, or do you see a reality where Conlan may just be a sort of nearly man that doesn't actually go over the line, in your gut instinct?
Yeah, he is 100% good enough to win a world title. However, he's in a tough division, and his best chance of winning a world title currently would be rematching Lee Wood, which I think that's why he's pushing for that so much. But as I've said, I'm not convinced that rematch will happen anytime soon. But
I totally agree with you. Actually, I think he's definitely world champion material. It's just like you say, getting that fight in and getting it over the line. But we're not going to focus too much on that. Obviously, I only to wish Conlan well. We're going to move, I believe, Elliot, start stateside, and you're going to take us through one of the fights that we've got going over there this weekend.
Yeah, exciting. This one has gone under the radar, in my opinion. It's Teofimo Lopez against Sandor Martin. Sandor Martin had a good win over the now retired Mikey Garcia a year or so ago. He's now 40-2. Teofimo Lopez is 17-1. So that one loss has come against George Kambosos Jr. This is a good fight, and I just think I don't know about you, but for me, I didn't know this fight was happening until 2 or 3 days ago. So it's just a bit sad that Lopez has gone from undisputed champion to being in a fight that's not getting a lot of attention, to be honest. I still think Lopez is I think he's a top fighter. I expect him to beat Sandor Martin, but it's an intriguing one because I think Sandor Martin spent quite a lot of time at European level, maybe too long at European level. Fantastic win over Mikey Garcia. And yeah, I think this is a good fight happening in Madison Square Garden in New York. Edging towards Teofimo Lopez on points of this one, but yeah, an intriguing one.
Yeah, that is intriguing. I agree with you. I think the weird thing when I'm looking at that is obviously Sandor Martin fighting Garcia at welterweight, and this fight happening at super super light. So yeah, I think it is an intriguing fight, and it has obviously crept under the radar as well. I again just kind of assume that Lopez will win, but I think it'll be a game. It'll be a game fight. And I think a points victory is something that I also I don't do the betting show, thankfully, because I'll lose too much money as it is. But I wouldn't bet against that being a reality either, or maybe even a Lopez stoppage. What was really good for me as well when I was researching this fight actually was just looking at kind of Lopez up at that junior welter sort of super light rankings and seeing him kind of highly placed and thinking there's better fights obviously for Lopez beyond this. Hopefully he comes through this and we see him against some other guys in that division that the likes of, I suppose, even the likes of like Taylor, all those sort of guys would be great to see. But yeah, I think Lopez victory, frankly.
Yeah, I think so. I just think it's a tougher fight than maybe it's not. I don't think it's not a straightforward, easy fight for Teofimo Lopez, but it's a good fight for him because I feel like it's that fight between it's a step up from the last fight he had, and it's that sort of step up he needs before fighting for a world title again. So yeah, I think it's a good fight and it's an important fight for Teofimo Lopez, and if he wins this fight, could potentially be fighting for a world title in his next fight at super lightweight. So we will see about that one. Last but not least, we've got a pound for pound star to discuss, and looking forward to hearing your views on that one.
Yeah, so we're still in the States. We're in Omaha for the WBO World Welterweight fight between Terence Crawford and David Avanesyan. Now, obviously, like you said, Crawford doesn't really need too much of an introduction. Undefeated, 38-0 record. Obviously, in that welterweight division, we were hoping to see Crawford take on Spence. Even sort of Ennis would be a great fight. Obviously, we'd be buzzing for that. Some other fighters around that division as well, actually, that were kind of highly rated. So it was quite a surprise in some ways to see sort of him take on Avanesyan with a 29-3-1 record, given really, I suppose, that he's been campaigning around European level until recently. So obviously he was the European champion, beat Josh Kelly in convincing style in the 6th round, which was a great highlight of mine actually on the weekend of February 2021. But then obviously he's fought, Liam Taylor and Askari Met since then, so hasn't obviously really been in with that. Well, he hasn't been in with anyone obviously like Crawford. Fought Laraga, which was not a bad victory, beat him twice there. So again, you can kind of go, well, he's all right, he's a good fighter, but he's not really anyone on Crawford's level. Obviously, Crawford comes into this with a victory over Sean Porter, a victory over a broken Kell Brook, frankly. I don't want to talk too much about that as being a victory. Another victory against a broken Amir Khan. So Crawford really needs, he's got good victories against the likes of Ndongo. Jeff Horn's not a bad win, but he kind of needs, in my opinion, bigger opponents and more marquee victories rather than just beating up kind of wash fighters from England that Matchroom throw to him. So I think not a bad fight. I mean, I expect kind of Crawford to come through this. I don't know anyone who doesn't. Given his sort of KO percentage, 29 KOs in 38 fights, I'd probably be leaning towards a Crawford KO somewhere during this fight. I mean, Avanesyan has been stopped before, back in 2018 against Kavalukas. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts, Stott? You think? I mean, I don't want to give anyone too many spoilers for the betting show comes midweek on sort of methods of victory, but are you thinking Crawford KO? And secondly, Crawford, another one of those sort of questions of where does Crawford go? Frankly, after this, who does he fight? Who do you want to see him fight other than Spence if that fight doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I remember kind of a couple months ago hearing strong rumors that this Spence fight was finally going to happen. So can't help but think that that's the fight we should be discussing now, rather than Crawford against Avanesyan, who I rate highly, by the way. I've seen him, lucky enough to have seen him fight in person, although that being against Liam Taylor, rather than someone of Crawford's stature. Definitely see a Crawford KO in this fight. But I think it could be competitive. I think it could be competitive for 5 or 6 rounds, and then I expect round 6 to 9, Crawford to stop Avanesyan. That would be kind of my prediction for this one. In terms of where Crawford goes, I just look, he's not. This is his first fight since November last year. He's 35 years old now, I believe. He's a fantastic fighter, pound for pound fighter, but I just think he's in danger of his career being defined by this Errol Spence fight just not happening. And I also think with Crawford, this is three-weight world champion. I don't really want to see him move up, and go up against kind of the Charlo or just someone who's just so on the night going to be so much bigger than him. I think he could get beat if he moves up personally. So yeah, not sure if that answers your question. Look, this is a good fight. He could be fighting a lesser opponent than David Avanesian, but yeah, I just don't. Is this Spence fight ever going to happen? Quite possibly not. I don't know.
I mean, Paul Kelly and I were discussing. He was saying, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but he was saying that if obviously this fight's on BLK Prime, a kind of odd promotional unit, not necessarily known or familiar to boxing. Josh Kelly fighting on Wasserman. Do you think there's a world where Josh Kelly fights Terence Crawford and beats him? I mean, I know that Paul Kelly is obviously very supporting of the British interest and would have Kelly dancing around Crawford for 12 rounds. Is that something you think could happen? Do you think that fight would ever happen? If so, do you think Crawford would beat him?
I hope that fight doesn't happen. I just think there's a clear golfing class there. So no, I mean, if Crawford fancies a trip to the Stadium of Light, then maybe that could happen. you never know. Maybe in next summer, but no, I don't think so. And Crawford's at the point of his career now where I think there's only demand for him to be in these big super fights against, to be fair, Sean Porter, Errol Spence. So we'll see. I mean, my final point on this is if the Spence fight doesn't happen, then I'd like to see him look at the prospects of the division, Jaron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz. Those are the two fights that we need to see rather than face someone who's on the level of David Avanesian, which is European / fringe world level, fight someone who is fight someone who is generally world level and someone who could be elite level in a couple of years. That's what we need to see. And with Crawford, if Crawford does that, he's then stepping into different generations as well. He's beating the likes of Kell Brooks, Sean Porter, and he's beating guys who are 8-9 years younger than him, who will be kind of the best fighters in the division 2 or 3 years' time. So if the Spence fight doesn't happen next year, those are the fights I'd like to see Crawford focus on personally.
I think I agree with you. I think that's also a good problem to have. It's almost like the same as the Tyson Fury problem, where you're sitting there going, these fighters obviously have a certain size and a certain renown in their divisions, and it's almost like you're unwilling to accept any other fight than sort of the two fights that are kind of big and right in front of them. So yeah, I totally agree with you. To be honest, Spence or Jaron Ennis next, or just no one. Frankly,
I mean, that's an option as well. Like, well, Crawford is 35. He's had quite a lot of fights. He might only want to have another 1 or 2 left. I think that's another option people need to accept as well. Yeah,
no, I agree, and I think be interesting to see. But if we don't see that fight next year, then like you say, 35. I just don't think it will happen. But we spend more time, I suppose, talking about fights that don't happen than fights that do happen. So let's try and restore some balance in that respect. I'm going to pass you over, Elliot, for any sort of final comments other than it's coming home. And if anything else you'd like to say to our viewers, please do so now.
Yeah, no, not much from me. Paul will be back next week, so I won't be here. But no, thank you for watching. We're nearly there, nearly at the end of the year now. I think next week could be the last show of the year, so look forward to that. But yeah, Elliot Grigg, thank you for joining me, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for watching.